Hi,
Oh,
everybody. Welcome to Queers and Soaps. I'm Tommy, and as always, I'm joined by Aaron and our recurring special guest star, Lynn.
Hey guys.
I'm
hello.
coming from a remote location tonight. That's why I don't have a background.
Got it.
He traveled long and far to get to this location. I really don't know how far
All
he
the way
went.
from South Shore, Long Island to the North Shore.
Ooh, that's probably I don't know. I've never been on the train there.
There's no train from north to south. Just Montauk to the city.
So how'd you get there then?
Bus.
Oh, that makes me think of Tu Wong Fu, where Noxzema goes, "I don't do the bus."
At least you didn't say hitchhike, so there you go.
Well, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, my cowboy hat's out, so that typically means Dallas.
It does.
Dallas it be.
So we're going to be covering the mini series / season 1. The
Right.
DVDs made it season 1. And the 2-part opener of season 2, which introduced us to Valine and Gary Ewing.
Valine.
So since we're all Knots Landing fans here, I thought that'd be a nice little treat for us.
Sounds like a good call.
Try to get me to watch it because
Nudge, nudge, nudge.
All right, run the credits and we'll start. So, Lynn, did you watch the whole thing over?
Meaning what we're going to cover? Or are you talking
Yeah.
entire? Yeah, I did rewatch all the episodes we're going to cover tonight. Yes.
Okay, we already covered the pilot, but real quick, what did you think about the pilot?
Pilot I thought it was pretty good. Right away it kind of established characters, backgrounds. Larry Hagman kind of owned that role right from the get-go.
Yeah.
I thought, it was very Romeo and Juliet right away to pull in the audience with the hook with Bobby and Pam at the beginning, and them being star-crossed lovers and having feuding families getting together. The series kind of kicked off with a bang, so I thought it was very well done.
Yeah.
the viewers just ate up Bobby and Pamela. They were so cute together.
Exactly.
I love Pam. I loved how she stood up to JR.
Mm-hmm.
Should I give you like the background on those three actors a little bit real quick before they started that series? Larry Hagman wasn't the original cast for JR. Instead, they had cast Robert Foxworth, who plays Chase on Falcon Crest.
Oh, really?
He was scared when they were doing readings for the script that JR just wasn't a likable character, and he didn't want to do that. Little did he know, everybody that was in 80s primetime soap opera drama wanted to play the bad guy, and that was the one who got the spotlight. So that was a misstep on his part, but it probably worked out for the better because I couldn't imagine anybody but Larry Hagman in the role of J.R. Ewing.
I also feel like he's substantially younger than Larry Hagman.
Right.
And in 1978, he would have been even younger.
You're correct, but when you think about it, there's a pretty good age gap between Larry Hagman and Patrick Duffy, who plays Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
But it just kind of worked because between Larry Hagman and Barbara Bel Geddes, who played his mama Naselli, there's only a 7-year age difference, really.
Oh, really?
And they kind of, as they do in soap operas, just kind of ignore that and don't talk about it much. So they recast JR, they got Patrick right away. Patrick Duffy basically had 2 deals on the table because the TV series Man from Atlantis had ended, and he got pitched a movie deal, and he got pitched Dallas, and he went with Dallas because it was going to be 5 episodes, and he wanted more money. And so they went that route, and he then helped them. He didn't help them, but he, I think, definitely influenced Victoria Principal being Pam because the 2 of them had such great chemistry when they screen tested as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I love her. I loved the end scene where she was basically like, "You better back me up," to Ray.
Yes.
I still can't get past Ray and Lucy though. That's all I see is niece and nephew, or uncle and niece, uncle and niece. I mean,
I know,
Right.
but you wouldn't have thought that until season 5.
Right. When they
I know.
did a little rewrite there. So, oops.
So, yeah, I love the ending when JR's like that he miss what did he say
Oh,
about his sister-in-law?
which time? There were so many good
It was the last line,
one-liners.
like I misjudged, or
Wasn't it? I misjudged the newest Mrs. Ewing or something like that.
I won't do
I
that
won't do it
again, or
again.
something
yeah,
like that.
something like that. I like that
There won't
ending
be a
line.
second time, or something of that nature. Yes.
Yeah, it was a nice little like cliffhanger for the first episode.
Mhm.
Just like Lucy kept saying to Pam over and over again at South Fork too, "You're never gonna last here, lady. You're never gonna last here," because she's talking about how they ran her mama Valine off, and Gary
Yeah.
couldn't stay on the ranch either because he couldn't deal with the family and their rivalry. So
What a quick way to just blurt out Lucy's backstory on the stairs. Like, you ain't got a chance, lady. And then just blurts out what they did to Valley.
boom.
But all right, so then let's move on to episode 2,
Very good.
which is Lucy. Oh, first of all, there's snow all over South Fork.
Right? I think that's the
Which I
only
was
time
like,
we
it
saw
snows in
that.
Dallas?
I think that was about it.
It occasionally snows in Texas.
Right?
It's rare, but
Does
can do
it
it.
shut down, or do they know how to handle it?
oh please, everything in the South shuts down when it snows. We're not equipped for snow because we
They
don't
ride
get-
horses and that's it.
So,
I mean, last winter I was off an entire week because of the snow.
in Arkansas?
Wow.
Wow.
Hmm,
It was a nice little vacation.
I guess.
How many inches did you get? 3?
No, we actually got a lot this time around. I can't remember what it was, but it was a fair amount. Like we haven't seen that kind of snow since I was a kid.
Wow.
Probably has to melt in like 2 days though for you guys, I would imagine.
No, it didn't melt in 2 days. Like that's
wow.
when it stayed for a while. We were sick of it by the time because we don't do well being told to stay in the house in the South.
Do you guys have snow shovels, or you just have to wait for it to melt?
I've never even touched the snow shovel.
Lucky you.
Exactly. I agree.
I used to take the broom and like the satellite dish would be covered when it was snowing. I would take our broom and just go out and just because I wasn't missing the shows. Break that sucker off.
Well, the thing that sucked about snow days here is you couldn't even enjoy them because the soaps are always interrupted for blizzard coverage. And I'm like, I get it. It's
Annoying.
snowing. Put Days of Our Lives on.
So if I remember right with the snow, it was Lucy who went out to the mailbox and is digging out the mail before anybody else gets to it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so she
yeah,
can't
to
get into
get her-
trouble because she's
Mhm.
skipping school
Exactly. Skipping school big time.
to go into the barn with Ray.
Yeah. Seemed to be quite a bit of that in those first 2 episodes, anyhow.
Yeah. She was pretty inventive with the whole. Okay, well, first, Pam is trying to like be her best friend and like drive her to school and buy her new clothes. And I laugh when she throws the dress out the window, and then the car stops, and you just see her walking back because Pam won't go until she goes get the dress.
She wasn't having it. Good for Pam.
I'm sorry. If my brothers or uncle's new wife wanted to do all that for me, I'd be like, all right, we friends. Besties. Spend that Ewing money.
That's right.
But yeah, I thought it was pretty inventive of her to cut up the clothes and to make it look like the teacher attacked her.
Yeah, she was doing whatever she had to get out of going to school. So that was
Mhm.
pretty sneaky, but it was good that somebody else saw what happened. Of course, he ends up manipulating her to his own advantage as well. But
Mm-hmm. So another thing that was going on was a new disco was opening.
I mean, how great was that commercial that you guys found to promote this episode? I was like, when I rewatched that episode, oh my God, the Dallas disco music that they used when they went to the discotheque, and like Victoria Principal in a sweater that's tighter than the shirt that I'm wearing, and the camera angles that they did, I'm like, wow, we have a lovely bunch of coconuts might as well be playing in the background, because they were hammering it home, and Bobby's disco dancing in his leather jacket, and you're just like, what's going on here?
Good old time.
Well, prior to that, when Lucy goes out with the boy that's blackmailing her, I guess, to go out with him, I like the whole Sue Ellen saying a woman never takes an invitation the same night or whatever, or the same day of. It's not like proper or whatever.
Exactly.
So she had to make up a lie that there was a party going on at the house and they didn't know kids were invited, and
she has that grandpa wrapped around her fingers, so she makes it happen.
Oh, how the times have changed. Now it's like, you got the invitation. It took you a whole hour to get that invitation.
In that big of a house, it's not like she couldn't even have snuck out and nobody would have probably missed her anyhow. That's what's kind of funny about that. But
the house is the one thing that drives me crazy. It's not the South Fourth Ranch.
I was going to mention the biggest recast that happened on this show was between season 1 and 2, when they got a whole different South Fork Ranch.
Yeah, they had like different houses for everybody. Like Sue Ellen and JR had their own little house on the side.
They were all
pointed to an abandoned one for Gary.
Yep, those little side houses or whatever.
I think it was because the family that owned the real house, or the house they used first, was like, no, we don't want to let you use it for a full series, like continuing on. So
I think too, like that was very ranch hands, that those side houses. So since they were adults, they didn't want to have them living inside the house. But yet when they changed locations for season 2, then everybody was just in the big house. We're the Waltons all together under one roof, and that's how they
when I was watching the reunion episode, because I didn't rewatch that, they're all just hanging around. I'm like, man, that house is so small. How are you all living in it? I mean, because I've been to that house and it looks bigger on television than it does in real life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's tiny in real life. It feels super tiny.
So when you rent it out, I don't know if you rented it out, Aaron, but
No. I just did a tour.
Okay. Some people have rented it for overnight. Yeah. I think they just get the whole house. I don't think you're there with like a bunch of other couples. I think it's like you have rented it and that's it.
Well, I don't know if they do that anymore, but they do rent out like this area for proms and things like that. Right. But it's very set up for like Dallas. Like,
yes. Dallas. Some more history here too, just for the history buffs that might be listening. That 5-parter miniseries, which is now referred to as season 1, they picked this ranch location, filmed the series there. They even used the interiors there. Then when it got picked up by CBS, that ranch said, no, we're not interested. I'm running a business here. So that's why they had to get a different location. They picked what they did that's now South Fork, that everybody knows and loves, but they still even used another location. And I could send you guys a link to this for the interiors. And that first season 2 was all filmed in Texas with those interiors until they built sets out in MGM in LA, because CBS was still on the fence and didn't want to invest this much money with building the look. So there is actually a house in Texas that does have that staircase that kind of spirals up the side of the wall that then CBS built for seasons 3 to the end of the show. When the series ended in 91, they went back to that house that they filmed season 2 in and re-rented it again for those reunion movies.
The movies, wow.
They did, like JR Returns and War of the Ewings. They used that basically. They threw enough money at a charitable donation that they said yes, because at first they were like, nope, not interested. And again, CBS didn't want to spend the money and build the sets, but they wanted the look to be there. So that was the angle that they did.
Oh wow, that's
history.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Way too much time on the internet and Wikipedia and whatnot.
See, it pays to have Lynn on. We didn't know this.
Well, the family that actually owned the second, they lived there throughout the first filming of the first few seasons or that. And then they just kind of said, we can't take it no more. Like, like tourist and all of, like, it was, It was
Well,
a
I'm
lot.
sure after Who Shot JR at the end of the third season,
Right.
it was.
They filmed quite a bit out back by the pool and stuff like that. But then again, CBS spent the money and built a set that looked like that. So if you watch when around season 5 or 6, whenever it is, and Sue Ellen and JR get remarried again in the backyard and everybody ends up in the pool, you can tell that's filmed on a lot just by looking at the sky in the backdrop if you really study what's going on the screen. But otherwise, you'd never know. They did a flawless job.
Yeah, they would film, I think, in bulk or something too. So many scripts in that in Texas because they could only get the house for so long.
Right. And that makes sense.
They'd film that outside stuff, I think, as much fast as they could.
Yeah.
So anyhow, back to Lucy being a brat at school.
Yeah.
She's always
So she ends up at this new disco with this boy who basically just wants to sleep with her.
Right.
And he's supposed to be like this proper, like grade A student that everybody should want to be with, but he's a pig.
Well, I guess men have not changed.
But because it's a new disco, Bobby and Pam go. Ray is there. Is he there with another girl?
He is there with another girl.
And Bobby finds out about Ray and Lucy, right?
I feel like he does. I feel like Lucy.
She's like throwing herself at Ray or something.
Yeah, right. And so Bobby and Ray did get into a bit of a fight over that, and then things kind of cooled down.
Yeah. And then Lucy kind of takes out her frustration on Pam, saying, "You're Ewing already. You already know how to manipulate." And Victoria Principal is just like giving it her all, glassy eyes. Like,
that kind of was the start, though, when they kind of had their little come to Jesus moment there at the end of the disco. And Lucy and Pam start forming a bond. Lucy starts respecting Pam because she's able to stand up and really stand up against the Ewings and what they're doing. Because Lucy is a Ewing through and through. She learned from the best being in that house. Otherwise, if she would have been away from it, she would have probably been a little bit more simple like Valine was. But Valine's got guts and legs too. And we'll talk about that when it gets to that part.
Yeah. So overall, I felt like for a 5-episode miniseries, like they did not plan on doing anything else. There's 2 episodes that kind of feel like filler, and this is one to me. Maybe it's because it's the Lucy episode, just to give Lucy some context.
Fair.
But it didn't. It felt like it had a different tone versus the 3rd episode and the finale.
It was probably one of 4 episodes that Charlene Tilton was really featured in. Otherwise, she was a background character, let's face it.
Yeah, it was probably just to give that character like a front burner story for once. It's not really my favorite, but whatever. So Pam and Lucy make up, and they end up having a moment where like, let's just like stay and dance all night. And that's the end of the episode.
Exactly.
And I assume Lucy goes back to school.
A lot of assumptions, but I think you're right.
Now, I really love the 3rd episode,
which is the Spy in the House. Spy in the House episode. Yes, that was good because started establishing that JR really not liking Pamela dynamic.
And it also showed us a little glimpse into JR and Sue Ellen's marriage. We got a little more backstory on Julie, who was in the pilot.
Yes.
I felt like that character had a lot of potential. They should have kept her around more.
Yeah, I mean, they should have. We do see her later on, as you probably know, too, if you've watched all of season 2, Tommy. I don't know if you have, Aaron, but we'll see.
Why did you do that to me?
It's okay. I mean, here's a fun fact, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, from watching Nick at Night or whatever. Have you guys ever heard of the show Gilligan's Island?
Of course.
And so you know who Ginger is?
Yes.
And that's who Julie is on there. That's Tina Louise playing JR's secretary, Julie.
Oh my God, I never
That was
knew
probably
that.
her first big role after Gilligan's Island ended. And it happened like 10 years later. So, yeah, it would have been interesting if they would have kept her on there. Because, again, for fan base purposes, it probably would have brought some eyeballs. But, yeah, there's a connection for you if you didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
I thought she looked familiar.
Yeah.
And I couldn't pinpoint.
Yeah.
I just love her. I love a Ginger, so I love it.
There you go. There you go.
I love seeing JR and Sue Ellen's marriage. I don't really think they're a healthy relationship. Clearly, they're not.
I was
Like,
about to say, what gives it away that they're not in a healthy relationship? Tommy?
not to talk too much about the future, but I actually prefer Sue Ellen with Dusty Farlow. But that's another
That's why I'm
podcast.
trying to give my best in Dustin Barlow tonight.
Yeah, I always feel so bad. She's definitely a desperate housewife. Like, she just wants to please her husband, and he's just like so. I don't. I don't get what he like. It's almost like he doesn't want to be with her, but he doesn't want anybody else to be with
She's
her.
a trophy wife, is kind of how I look at it, for the fact that she was Miss Texas, and JR wants to be king shit out of his 3 brothers, and so he married the beauty queen, and they've got to be the next representation of the Ewings in that house. I mean, JR is always on a scheming level, but JR is a scoundrel, and he's always skirt chasing all the time too.
Yeah.
So,
and apparently Julie was the one he was with before Sue Ellen, and would have married if it wasn't for the way it looked, or like to the public.
Yep.
His secretary.
Right.
Apparently he runs to Julie and complains to her about his wife all the time. I liked how she was like, maybe you should tell your wife what you like. That's how I learned.
And she's always like, Bobby wants the red file. JR, where do you want me to put the red file? That red folder was like a cast member that first season, I swear.
Yeah, right.
It was part of season 2 as well. He's like, he had the little recorder, transcript this to put it in the red file.
Yep.
Erase tape.
Good catch.
I've watched season 1 multiple times because it's so short. And I always enjoy her little speech, like, the mornings, JR. The mornings. I'm always alone in the morning.
But it was sad. She was really heartbroken when he
threw $100 bill at her. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, wow, just totally tactless, tacky.
But I like how she called Cliff Barnes and was like, "You want to go to dinner? I'm paying."
That was good. That was kind of good that relationship happened right away in this first season, or the miniseries, or whatever you want to say, because it established that dynamic that these women were drawn to the JR Cliff Barn types. They're like, oh, I like the bad boy, but I like the guy that treats me nice. But now he's treating me too nice, so I need to go back to the bad boy. And it pendulums back and forth, which explains a lot of the dynamic and the hatred between JR and Cliff as well, too. Because they're fighting over the same women quite a bit.
No wonder we have had such unhealthy relationships, Tommy. We watch too many shows like Dallas.
Well, I was gonna say I didn't watch Dallas till I was an adult, but yeah, that's true. But from what I've seen, Cliff is not a good guy. He grandstands and he wants to get the Ewings, but he's kind of ruthless himself.
Exactly. Well, he doesn't. He's like the better Digger, because Digger and Jock had their partnership and that kind of fell apart, maybe primarily due to Digger's drinking, but Cliff didn't have the clout. So he's trying to politically be that social climber too, to get even with JR and the Ewings for what he feels they took from his daddy. And so they got to make that. He's trying to always make that right.
I love how everyone says daddy in this series, because anytime I think, I'm like, that word's going to change so much.
Different context, perhaps. Yeah.
Like, that word's going to get a little meaning change before too long.
That's funny.
But yeah, so you mentioned how it amped up the Pam and JR rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was real quick to throw her under the bus.
He was. He's right away. He's like, there's a traitor in the house, or and like everybody's around the dinner table and stopping, eating, and looking at Pam. And like, I did feel bad for Pam. Nobody stands up for her. Not even like Bobby's ball sack didn't drop right away until he finally went outside. He said something to JR, and then he goes outside to comfort his wife. And it's like, maybe cue a little bit quicker on that one, Bobby, but it was pretty funny.
He stepped up eventually.
Yeah, that's
he got them out of the house. And
this is the thing I liked about JR was, yeah, he may have picked on his family, but if someone came after his family, didn't matter if he liked them or not.
Right.
He was like, all right, no one messes with my family but me. Kind of had that kind of,
And then I felt bad for Julie when she realized that Cliff used her for the red file, or it was the Orloff file. It wasn't the red file.
Got it.
Well, is it the same?
I think that information was in the red file. Let's put it that
I was
way.
always confused because that red file was like this big, but it was talked about like this much.
Here it is.
So
And imagine that was before Post-it notes. So that thing that had to have filled with just 8.5 by 11 pages, there must have been about 6 in it, as skinny as that file was. But
It's something this time around. I never really thought about it, but I guess I don't. Was bored. I don't know. I thought about it way too much. But I was
maybe.
looking at the file when Julie got her hands on it from Pam, and so they knew that Pam was bringing it over. Wait.
Bobby dropped it behind the couch.
Yeah, and Pam found it, and she was
And
bringing
so
it
then,
over.
yeah, Bobby calls her and says, "Hey, I must have left a file there. Can you find it?" She finds it, says she'll bring it in.
Mm-hmm.
She's
She hands
chit-chatting
it to
with
Julie. She says that they're in a
Julie
meeting.
says, "I'll take it to him."
Yeah, and then
Famous
she's
last words.
for lack of a better word, fingering it.
Sure. Yep.
And I'm like, does she not give them the file, or does she make copies of it, or does she just write down what's in it?
I feel like she.
Or
I
copy
can't
machines
remember
around
correctly.
them?
She took something out and put it back later, or if she took and copied something and gave that to Cliff. I can't remember how that was. I
Yeah, they
feel
didn't
like
show it. That's why I was like, did they get the file? Like, how wouldn't they have known if Pam was bringing it and Julie didn't give it to them? Why didn't they make that connection?
Well, because I think there was other stuff they were digging for in that red file, not particularly the piece of information they gave Cliff.
Ah, okay.
So, but then Cliff had the right piece of information to really cause a scandal for the Ewings and did a little press conference, and Jock is yelling with his drink, or whatever he said. But
oh man, he could probably tell that man could probably be like, "Hey, how are you?" I'd be scared.
Jock?
he was
Yeah.
fast.
Because the way he just Doc Ewing.
Jar, he's your brother.
He had kind of had that Batman voice. I'm Batman.
Yeah.
I like how optimistic Pam was. She was like, everything's gonna be all right. We'll be back on South Park before you know it. And Bobby's just like, if you say so.
Yeah, exactly. Bobby, that was probably the first of Bobby's many cues of saying to Pam, "We're going to move off the ranch." And they never, ever did. They talked about it forever, but they just always stayed there.
So does Pam see Julie at Cliff's? I can't remember.
She does. She's waiting in her car and she sees Julie leave Cliff's apartment. And then she runs across the street and talks to her. And Julie's just like, whatever, and kind of blows her off. But the proof was in the pudding and they kind of knew what happened. That Julie was the guilty one, because then I think Bobby, because Pam tells Bobby, and then Bobby confronts Julie. And Julie just says, "It doesn't matter. I'm going to quit." She just gives her notice. She's basically assuming the guilt, but she just can't handle the fact that everybody knows. And so she just wants to get the hell out. And she's like, "I did it." And then she leaves.
Yeah. But prior to that, her whole last confrontation with Cliff, you used me. And he was like, I said from the beginning, I would use you. And she's like, doesn't matter if you were honest or not. I'm leaving here the same. Use. That's another famous line I like from her.
Yep.
The mornings and you being used.
They wrote her well. They did a good job with writing her pretty well, and she played it strong, which was
I was kissing her neck, and she's like, the mornings. I'm eating breakfast alone.
The mornings are the hottest. Oh man.
But yeah, that's one of my favorite episodes from season 1.
That's how you wake up in the morning, isn't it? The mornings.
No, I don't talk in the morning. I need at least 2 cups of coffee.
Oh, well, then Greg probably does that, because I can see Greg being dramatic like that.
No, he just growls at me. He's that child that won't. He's probably watching because we have 1 viewer right now. But I'm always like, get up. You have to get ready. And he's like, mm-hmm. And I'm like, get up. You have to go. And I'm like, he's definitely that child that had to be screamed at to get up to go to school.
I'm saying I'm schooled. John comes to the room. He kind of starts giving me a little massage, and he slowly wakes me up. It's wonderful.
Nice.
Oh, how nice.
He hates my alarm, so that's why.
So the fourth episode, the one with the hurricane,
I love a good storm episode.
I actually kind of hate this episode.
I like the actor Brian Keith that was in there that was really ticked off at JR because JR slept with his wife or whatever. So then they drive back to South Fork to try and seek out revenge, and all the women are there by themselves because JR and Ray where were JR and Ray? Were they out trying to help bring in some cattle or something was going on? And Bobby and Jock were caught at the office. I mean, we never see Jock at the office, but that episode he happens to be at the office.
Yeah.
We've seen him at the office before when Cliff Barnes was on television. First episode.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good.
I pay attention.
You do pay
Maybe
attention.
these were like the last of his office days. Yeah, so JR and Ray are on, I don't know if they're on a catalog.
JR and Ray were
away for the week.
They went to go buy some cattle or something like that, and they ended up hooking up with a couple of women, taking them back to the hotel. This Brian Keith, I don't know the character he plays on there, but Brian Keith, that name sticks out to me because he was also the lawyer cross-examining Blake on season 1 into season 2 when they had Enter Alexis, and he was in that role too. He kind of plays that bigger than life type of character, and he's just there to be a total tyrant at South Fork and realizes that JR's gone and he's going to have his way with JR's women.
Well, when they catch their wives, once JR and Ray have left, this is the thing that kind of bothers me about these older shows is when they slap women around.
Right?
I'm always just like, oh, that was shown on TV, really?
That's why I like it when the women fight back. It's like, boom.
Like even on Dynasty, I think some of them slap their wives around a little bit, and I'm like,
probably early Dynasty, and then after that, it just switched over to cat fights because they realized that's where the viewers really wanted what they wanted to see more than anything.
So they decide they're going to take their revenge out because they find a business card with JR's name on it.
Correct.
And that's how they find South Fork, I assume.
Yep. I believe
why would JR have his like home address on his business card?
Well, and who knows? I don't know if his home address was on there, if they had to do a little detective work. Obviously, they didn't hop on Google back in that day, but JR was probably pretty well known by that stage in the community, and they knew how to figure it out or connect the dots.
Well, and they owned a ranch, so it's probably known about South Fork Ranch. I mean, he owned an oil business. They're millionaires. So
I liked when they were like gathering up the cattle and whatever to lock down the ranch. That Lucy went right out there with them.
Yep.
And Ray, was it Ray that hurt himself? He like fell.
I think you're right. Ray did get hurt versus JR didn't. And let's face it, Ray's been in way more fistfights than JR, so that debilitated Ray's character when they got back to South Fork, and he really couldn't defend the women against the two intruders that were there.
So they were looking to hook up with somebody of their own, and when they found that Pam was actually not
one of them
grow up a Ewing.
Yep, exactly.
They didn't want her.
Right. And because she didn't have the silver spoon in her mouth, they weren't interested in her.
Mm-hmm.
I was too. I'm not a Ewing either. I just cleaned the house.
I like that when she was on the phone with Bobby, she knew to say that her and JR were about to sit down to play a game.
Yes.
Just to kind of be like, that's weird.
It was probably the first episode where they gave like Sue Ellen / Linda Gray more lines, and that made them probably go when they made it a full-time series, because Sue Ellen and Ray weren't in the opening credits on the season 1. They were added at season 2. I know how you guys like those opening credits. I do too. So just an observation.
If I ever had to give like a signal, it would be, I cooked the meal all by myself, and now I'm washing the dishes.
Right through his teeth.
Don't be like, oh my God, what's wrong?
Exactly.
Mine would probably be like, I'm watching football.
Code red.
Yeah, I always feel bad for Sue Ellen in this when they made her dress up in her Miss Texas swimsuit and wear the sash and sing.
Right.
It's just so heartbreaking to watch her like cry and be like humiliated in front of the whole family.
It's
Still
heartbreaking for anybody to have to listen to people who need people for too long. and when she sang that song of all song, I'm like, oh, how much did we pay for rights to use this song? And I would have picked something different, but it's okay. It was good.
And essentially, she's learned that even though she knows that he's cheated before, but this is like confirmation.
And even Miss Ellie was in the room when that happened. That's where I was like, whoa, your mom's sitting right there, and she's learning that you're just nasty.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
and prior to that, Miss Ellie was in bed with a migraine. So she was like, what the hell is going on in my house?
Well, but she was downstairs and she did hear that because then, spoiler alert, when Jack and Bobby are home and they apprehend the guys, Jack wants to call the police and Miss Ellie's like, no, Jack, we can't. And it's like, oh yeah, keep those secrets in the closet. Let's not open up Pandora's box.
I like how she's like, we can't get the law involved.
Yep, exactly. And then Jack's like, if I ever see you again, you're dead. Okay, got it.
Why does he call her Miss Ellie?
Everybody calls her Miss Ellie. I don't know if it was a really proper term back then or what the story was.
That's something that's always like, I just don't understand it. Maybe it's just me. It's something, no judgment, but those husband and wives who will call each other father or mother.
Right.
There's something about it. I'm just like, ugh.
I wonder if it's like a term of endearment. I've never seen the Dallas the Early Years, the TV movie.
I haven't watched it.
I wonder if that's just something like a nickname he gave her when they were dating and it just stuck.
It could be.
Miss Ellie.
I have it. I just haven't watched it yet.
Gotcha. It's okay. Aaron has it too.
I've watched it.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say, people. I watched all of Knox Landing. Aaron's in trouble.
We'll just add this graphic later. Check. There's one for Aaron. He's got one over us.
Oh.
So,
okay, I guess we're up to the finale now, which I love. Love this episode.
Barbecue was good. People even, it's still referred to even as a cliffhanger of season 1. And I'm like, I get that. You know what I mean?
I don't get, though, because it does kind of end on a cliffhanger. But if they didn't know it was coming back, why would you do that?
Well, exactly. I think they want to say that was what the cliffhanger was for season 1, because then after it was on for 13, 14 seasons, they want to say like, oh, that was their cliffhanger for that season. And it's like, okay. And so I don't want to give away the ending for the audience. Yeah. We're going to talk about it here, everybody. But, this is the audience. This is the episode, you're right, that's so cute, where Pam leads off and she's like, what do you get when you cross a Ewing with a Barnes? A boy
or a girl.
And Patrick comes out in his towel, and we all pause the screen for a minute and then unpause it.
These were the moments where I was like, I didn't know I was into Patrick Duffy, but I'm like, all right, Bobby.
Oh, he's been a good-looking man his entire life, I feel like. Step by step, I was feeling Bobby. When he came back to Dallas, I still like Bobby.
So again, right away, there's jealousy with Sue Ellen, the fact that Bobby and Pam are pregnant before her and JR are pregnant.
Yes, because they're going to have the firstborn Ewing heir.
Yep. That's a thing down South. That's like when you're the oldest child, you're kind of expected to have the first. I've seen that happen before. So
that's not like it's the first heir, because Lucy really is the first grandchild. But it's the fact that they can have a boy. That's what Sue Ellen's more worried about.
Yeah. And
someone to carry on the family name.
Yep.
That's in the South. That's a big thing. Like, we got to carry on the family name.
Yep.
This is the first glimpse we have at Sue Ellen's alcoholism.
Yeah, she's starting to kick him back at the barbecue, isn't she? They all were, though. They all were drinking. So they're having this is the first time we're ever seeing this barbecue that they make it sound like they do all the time, but they did it up, and it held kind of true to some of the other ones that we've seen on. We saw the big yellow and white umbrellas put out everywhere and stuff like that, and people are dancing and they've
I
got
like
a band hired.
the staff that was working, how they're all gossiping about the rich people. They're like, who's the first to get drunk? And they point to Jock, and they're like, he's got a good head start.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, he's not supposed to be drinking because Miss Ellie said no, and he's like sneaking them.
Well, they're worried because now for this barbecue, they've invited Pam's dad, Digger, and they know that there's friction there between Jack and Digger, and Jack isn't too thrilled that Digger's going to be there, but Miss Ellie's like, you be nice to him, because obviously Digger and Miss Ellie had a little bit of a romance too back in the day.
Yep.
So
word is getting around the party that Pam is pregnant before they even tell the grandparents.
It's like, okay, everybody knows there's only 20 minutes left. When the hell are you going to tell Miss Ellie and Jock?
Yeah. I liked Pam's cousin that came. What was his name? The one that they tried to pair up with Lucy.
And he was just dumb as a post, unfortunately.
Jimmy? Was that his name?
I can't remember. He's in the reunion episode, right?
Yeah, but I think it's a different actor.
I wondered the same if it was a different actor too, but you're right, Aaron. He is in the two-parter of season 2.
Mm-hmm. I can't think of his name. We'll just call him Pam's cousin.
There you go.
I think it's Jimmy. I liked how he was like messing with Lucy when she's like, do you like boys or girls? Or she was like, do you like girls? And he's like, yeah, they're fine. She's like, you don't like boys, do you?
And didn't he say something like, yeah, they're okay, or something like that? She's like, you don't like them like that, do you?
And he's like what? She's like, never mind.
Was he supposed to be gay?
No, I don't think so.
I just don't think he was very bright. I just didn't think he know that somebody was flirting with him and he didn't know how to.
Oh God!
No, I think he did. He was messing with her because he kind of smirked when she walked off.
Okay,
so I think he was messing with her.
Maybe you're right.
Not to jump too far in the future, but Lucy, doesn't she almost marry a guy that's gay?
I believe
yes.
So.
I think she gets engaged to him, and then finally he just has to break it off.
Yeah.
And like that was actually a good scene, I think, between Bobby and Lucy about that, and they handled that actually pretty well for back in the time.
Yeah, I remember seeing that a few years ago for the first time, and I was like, "Wow, this is like 1979."
As much as I love
tackling gay issues,
as much as I love Dynasty, they didn't tackle the gay issues very well.
They struggled with it. I mean, they gave
first season. Oh,
they wanted a good attaboy for tackling it that first season, but they really just handled it. Really,
there's still one moment when I cringe in season 1 of Dynasty when Blake says the school of blah 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 blah.
Yeah. The pilot.
I'm like, oh,
yeah, crazy.
Oh, the 80s.
So they tell the grandparents that Pam is pregnant, and Jock and Digger have a handshake. What? Willard is his real name. I'm like, would they call him by his real name?
Right.
Willard.
So then the two guys go over and walk towards the bar that's outside. And then Jock starts saying, that kid's going to have everything. And Digger's like, and I can give him nothing. So right away he's feeling that power of intimidation. And he starts fighting with Jock, and he's like, well, you took everything from me. You took my girl, you took my oil field, now you're gonna take my grandbaby. It's like, ooh.
Yeah.
He's got one track on that tape. It's the same thing.
So then he starts drinking heavily.
He does start pounding it back.
And he does a little song and dance number for everybody.
If ever there was a Dallas soundtrack album, that would have been on there.
Poor Dick.
And then don't we cut to like Sue Ellen? Oh, Sue Ellen's like talking to all the women there.
All the Mrs. Ropers that are sitting around her, basically. Yeah. And she just keeps drinking. She keeps drinking. And like she's riding a horse and she's drunk. And you're just like, whoa, these people are just really loose with alcohol and just doing whatever they want. And like JR's getting sauce too, because he's not happy that Bobby and Pam are going to have a baby.
Yeah.
For him.
And Sue Ellen, there's one scene where she's sitting at the table with like a bunch of ladies and she's just babbling on and on and on. And they're just staring at her.
Exactly.
And then she's like, maybe I overstated the situation. She starts again.
Because all the women are like, we can still drink and eat for free, right? We don't have to pay for any of this. Oh man.
And then there's another scene where Sue Ellen's on a horse, just riding this horse drunk around in
And then
circles.
doesn't Bobby come and talk to her? And so she's like, Bobby, and he's
Yeah,
trying to help her off.
I feel like she kind of flirts with him a little bit too.
She does.
And then JR kind of stumbles over drunk.
Did he stumble over drunk, or I'm trying to remember, did he drive a car up over there?
Oh, I don't remember. I thought he stumbled over with like a bottle in his hand.
Well, I thought he drove a car over there, and because he was so drunk, Bobby took the car from him to take Sue Ellen back to the main house. So then JR starts heading over to the barn.
Oh, maybe because he sees Pam in the window.
Right, because he's got to now walk, and he sees Pam because what the hell? Oh, what was it with Pam? Did Pam go out to the bar because she was out there with Jimmy?
She went up there. Oh, she went up there to get Jimmy because Jimmy was up there with Lucy.
Okay, that's
to tell Jimmy that Digger was drunk and that he should take him home.
Gotcha.
So Jimmy and Lucy went down, and Pam just kind of hung out there for like a minute.
Right.
And then JR saw her, and he climbed up into the hay. I don't know what it is, the hay loft.
Exactly.
And I don't think he had cruel intentions. So
I don't think his intention was malicious. I mean, do you think differently, Aaron, or what do you think? I think he was just babbling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was babbling in the fact that he's like, well, we got to try and make nice. You're going to have a baby and blah, blah, blah. And she's like offstandish of him. And she starts backing up and not paying attention. And then she falls. And I remember being a little kid and seeing that fall. I was kind of traumatized when I saw that.
Oh, you watched it when it aired?
I didn't see it when it first aired, but I was watching it, guys, when Who Shot JR happened. And that aired in like April or May. And then summer happened when they have the summer break and you're waiting for it to come back. And that year they had an actor strike. It was either an actor strike or a writer strike.
I think it was writers.
All the season, all the shows, didn't start until like November of that season. So they were actually, they knew what episodes they wanted to re-air during the summer, and the strike went on longer than they thought. So they started re-airing that season 1 and replaying it because a lot of people, the eyeballs weren't there originally like they were for Who Shot JR. And that's how I originally saw those episodes. And when I saw Pam fall, I was like, gay gas, basically.
That makes a lot of sense because when I was doing research on all these shows, I remember thinking, wow, why didn't they come back till November? Like, that's a really long wait.
Yes. So then on top of it, just spoiler alert here, we'll just insert, during that time, Larry Hagman used it to his advantage too. And he said, I want more money. And he kind of dug his heels in and he pulled the Friends deal. Basically, he's like, if you antiquate what interest is, I'm almost kind of making what all the cast of Friends got when they did their 6 Stand Strong and got their deal they did. So they were thinking about recasting him and then they decided not to. So if you watch that first episode that comes back of that season after JR was shot, they don't show his face in that episode. They show sides of his face being lifted from the gurney into the hospital bed and stuff like that because it's not Larry Hagman in that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll have to go watch it now.
It must have been like the Joan Collins.
The Joan Collins, right after the Moldamian Massacre, she was holding up for money too. And so she wasn't in the season premiere. They just had her in a jail cell over there and you never saw her that first episode.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So he had a grip on her though.
Well, I think he was trying to reach for her and
that's how she fell off.
Yeah, it was just bad and sad, but kind of probably necessary from a plot device standpoint.
So they find out they lost the baby. Jock kind of like pleads with Pam to stay, right?
He does. Jock really feels bad because, again, I think he knows JR's a handful, but yet he kind of sticks up for JR because nobody else does. So he tries to just make Pam feel the remorse that they're feeling. And so she won't pull away and that was his way of finally letting her know you are a part of this family. I thought that was handled pretty well. That showed a little bit of heart on Jock's part. Instead of being so protective and anti-Barnes, he softened a little bit to her.
Yeah, which makes Pam want to stay on the ranch, and so Bobby and her decide to stay.
Yep, exactly.
And then we have the outside scene. So it doesn't really feel like a cliffhanger.
It wasn't. They talk about, oh, Pam falling and losing the baby, and I'm like, but there was still another 8 minutes left of that episode. But
yeah, like we found out she lost it. It wasn't like she fell and we didn't know if she lost it. Like,
exactly,
we found out.
Exactly.
But Sue Ellen asked JR if he did it on purpose.
That was a dynamic scene.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what did she say? He goes, are you asking me if I'm remorseful that she lost the baby? And
doesn't she say, like, are you glad?
And then she goes, but are you glad? And then he didn't answer her.
Mm-hmm.
So he answered her first question, but on her second, and she knew the answer and she didn't push it because she's like, I know the man that I'm married to. He's sad, but not totally sad.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
that was great. That was an awesome Sue Ellen scene, though. Again, they didn't give her much, but when they did give her the cues, she was good, and she kind of started laying the groundwork. And granted, she's standing there like this, and the drink is swirling, and she's starting to swerve, and I'm like, oh, set up the next 12 years, Linda, because that's what it's going to be.
I think this episode and the one prior to it, definitely, they were like, okay, she could be a regular. She can act.
Uh-huh.
But, all right, so you guys ready to talk about
dun, 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 dun.
the 2-part season 2 opener? We get introduced to Lucy's mother, Valine.
I love her name. I don't know why.
You do or don't like her name?
I do. I love her.
That. Good.
Before we start this, though, regarding her name, I liked how in the pilot of Knots Landing, they introduce her as Val to Richard, and he calls her Valerie, and they're like, oh, Gary's like, oh, Valine.
Yep. Yeah.
Because he just assumed that Val was short for Valerie.
And again, we got lucky because if you've watched any little interviews or read some with Joan Van Ark, she wasn't going to take that role. She was busy filming something in Hollywood, as well as being the L'Oreal girl in New York, having to do voiceover work there. And they called her, and they shot all that in Texas. And she said to her husband, she's like, I can't do it. And he's like, yes, you can. You have to. And she did. And look at what it turned into, which is kind of amazing.
Wow.
Because I couldn't imagine anybody else as Valine, but I could maybe imagine somebody else as Gary after what we saw in this 2-parter.
I think the reason why I like the second Gary better is just because that's the one I'm familiar with.
Of course. Well, and he's pretty. Let's face it.
Oh, yeah. I feel like Ted Shackelford and Joan Van Ark has better chemistry, though.
Exactly.
Like, I think it worked out in Knox Landing's favor that, is his name Dan or David? Or
Dan.
I was going to write it down. I didn't get the chance to write it down.
Whatever his name is.
David Aykroyd.
There you go. Thank you, Tommy.
I think it was a blessing in disguise that he couldn't continue on further.
He was busy with other projects when I think they reached out to him to spin to Knots Landing, and he couldn't commit. And I'm like, I'm kind of torn.
You never know. It could have been a good show too, just a different show.
He came on later though in Knox Landing.
He did. You're right. And in season 3, when you watch it, Aaron, you'll see him again.
Whenever you get around to that.
I'm getting there.
You are. I know you are. Hopefully you get past episode 2 before the week is out. Yes. Yes. Make it a goal. Yes.
You look pained. Like you have a pained look on your face.
Just watch 2 less Riverdales this week and you'll be okay.
I can't help it. Riverdale's so good right now. I'm on season 4 episode. Like I'm almost done with season 4.
Tommy, you got to back me up here.
I told him, I'm like, he told me I have to watch like 2 or 3 episodes. I'm like, it's probably because he's going to post spoilers soon.
So what was interesting is I thought this 2-parter, they did an excellent job of telling the whole backstory of Gary and Val, how they met, how, they had a baby, came back to the ranch, JR obviously wasn't thrilled and probably was pulling some devious things that scared Gary off because he can't handle the family dynamic. And then
Can't handle any pressure.
Right. And then Val couldn't stay there by herself with Lucy, that she took off with Lucy, but then JR's good old boys.
Which shocked me. I feel like Miss Ellie and Jock would have let the mother of their grandchild stay there.
I think JR made it seem like she ran off.
I think you're right. I think he probably ran her off because he was good at pulling the wool over Miss Ellie's eyes all the time.
Because I think that's what,
I feel like it took until JR tried to kidnap John Ross with Miss Ellie and the helicopter for Miss Ellie to finally wake up to how devious JR can be.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy, if you've seen that scene, you know what I'm talking about. Aaron, you may or may not have, but I feel like that's when finally Miss Ellie saw her son for what he is. So,
yeah. Well, we got to see the new ranch in this quarter with the
beautiful.
pool.
I love it.
Yep.
So small, but yes.
It's better though. Right away, they're at the pool.
Yeah.
And Pam and Bobby are playing in the pool, and Suellen's doing her crossword. Do you guys know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
And he's like, "What's a word for blah blah blah?" And JR distinctly looking at Pam in her wet swimsuit in the pool, and he's like, "Buoys," and it fits. And Suellen sees it. She's just kind of grimacing to herself.
I liked when Pam's like, "Oh, I like this song. You like this song?"
Click.
Me as a child.
Yeah, Lucy was still being a little bit of a brat towards Pam, but that was also the scene too where we saw again that little bit of heart in Jock, and he's like, "Pam, don't overdo it in the pool." And Miss Ellie's like, "Jock, just let her be."
Yeah. So Jock was gonna take Bobby and Lucy to the cattle auction.
Correct.
And so Sue Ellen kind of works her way into getting JR an invitation.
She's trying to show she's just as
Yeah.
sneaky as he can be.
Mm-hmm. Sue Ellen's worried about their social status within the house too, so she's kind of pushing JR out of his comfort zone to spend more time with his daddy and be that part as well.
So she does that, and it's funny how she tells JR, she's like, Isn't that wonderful, JR? Daddy wants to take you to the cattle auction." And he's like, "What?"
Exactly. He's like, "I want to go into the office." No.
Oh, JR.
So then we also have Digger, who is basically disowning Pam.
Well, he's kind of in the dry out, going through the DTs and shaking, and she's trying to see him, and he can't even form a sentence or anything.
Yeah, we meet Pam's aunt.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Jenny? Aunt Jenny?
Maybe.
Or am I thinking of Val's aunt, and I'm getting confused with Knots Landing?
Aunt Jenny.
I think Jenny is Knots Landing. It's different. It's different on Dallas. Pam's aunt isn't Jenny.
Yeah, I mean, she's in a few episodes. I don't think she's really that important, though.
Right.
So Pam's dealing with that. So she really doesn't have too much interaction with Valian.
Right.
Lucy is sneaking off with Jimmy to meet up with Valian. Apparently, she's been doing this like once a month, going to see Valian at the diner she works at.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we hear the backstory. You know, she was 15. Gary walked in. He was the prettiest thing she ever saw.
Mm-hmm.
I like when they bring Gary back. Like she brings him to the diner, and she's like, "Look, Mama, he's still pretty."
He's still pretty. I'm like, okay. Interesting way to term it.
I was gonna say I don't. Yeah.
And once again, Lucy's back in the barn with Ray, trying to like work her magic on him.
Yeah, I don't know what she's hoping for there.
She just needs to be hugged. Like she just needs
Well, and perhaps it's daddy issues. Let's put it that way. She's back in the barn with Ray hugging him, and then they hear somebody coming because meanwhile nobody is realizing that Bobby and Pam went to Vegas and bumped into Gary of all places. And Bobby convinced Gary to come back home for a visit.
Mm-hmm.
And Lucy and Ray are down in the barn, and Lucy's like, "Who's that?" And Ray looks at through the binoculars, and he knows who it is. And then she looks, and she kind of just has that feeling. They never explain, has it been like 15 years since daughter and father have seen one another? I don't know if that's the case, but
yeah, like she doesn't know what her father looks like.
She runs all the way up to him, and she's like, Hi, Daddy.
And then they do this weird, like, handhold.
Miss Ellie has more intimate affection for Gary than Lucy does, but whatever. It's kind of funny. Miss Ellie, definitely Gary's her favorite for whatever reason. And maybe because Gary's more like her and he loves the land and he doesn't have much desire to be in the oil business and all that type of stuff. So, which I appreciate that they really established that then and they carried that through on to Knots Landing, because then eventually, as we know, Gary will start looking at property like that for himself too. And then we'll stop talking about Knots Landing there.
So Gary and Lucy convince Val to come to South Fork. And she meets Pam and she, you know, reintroduces. I guess she meets Sue Ellen for the first time, right?
I think she does. She is introduced to her.
Mm-hmm. And then Jock is just kind of like, oh, JR is just like, I guess we were all just kind of like young and hot-headed back in the day. Like, you ruined her life.
They try and brush it off, and even Val lets it go right away. She's like, yeah, let's bygones be bygones. But I'm like, you'd feel like the outsider, you'd probably just be complacent, and that's what that was a very complacent, oh, let's all try and get along.
Mm-hmm. And JR kind of comes up with some dummy company for Gary to run that's going to fail. Just to get him off the ranch.
Exactly. He wants to start setting Gary up right away and giving him too much pressure. He knows what buttons to push because.
And Valine sees it coming a mile away. Like, it's been years, and she's just like seeing history repeat itself. And he ends up crumbling under the pressure.
Exactly. He can't, and he just can't handle it. Instead of being verbal about it, it's just kind of funny. It's like they just didn't talk as a family. Like, it was definitely business, man's world, women, kitchen. And like, you think Gary, who was such a mama's boy, would have maybe went to his mom and said, you know what, this just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's probably just the times, and that was just frowned upon. And it's like, you wouldn't go talk to your mom, you'd go talk to your dad. And he just couldn't talk to his dad. They didn't have that relationship.
Mm-hmm. So he goes to sneak off, essentially. Like, is this what he did the first time around? That
Probably.
Val was there and had to be run off?
Probably.
And she,
I
like this. She was like, I was going to come to you right now. Like, I was like, oh, Val, you like it in the morning?
Then I was going to go for a run.
Oh, goodness.
In her white nightie. I was about to come to you right now.
Funny. I loved how they quickly all just assumed like they were going to stay there, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He told Bobby he was there for a visit, and then right away it just turned into like, oh, and here's Lucy's
The family was like, no, your family, you're living here now.
It was just like, boom, okay, let's just pretend like the past 15 years didn't happen, and now we'll just pick right back up again.
The only way we're going to move forward is if you just move in and we just...
One big happy family.
Yeah. So Gary ends up leaving after like a heart-wrenching scene with Val. And JR steps in and offers her money to leave again.
It was probably that scene that this first Gary had with Val that felt the most authentic of the Gary that we know throughout the series of Knots Landing. That's where I felt like that Val-Gary connection was believable in that scene. The rest of it, I was kind of like, I'm just not feeling it. I get it. And I'm kind of glad they recast. And I feel like Aaron, they did a good job with the recast and it all kind of worked, because I feel like Ted and Joan played very well off of each other as Gary and Val.
Yeah, because this Gary, I could see more as a Richard.
I know where he's going with that, and I'm not going to deny him. I'll just nod politely and be like, I could see it.
I'm guessing he's kind of like a Richard in season 3 then.
Yeah.
I don't remember, honestly.
Yeah.
I guess it'll be brand new to me when I watch it.
Here's the more trivia buff portion of the show again, everybody. Ted Shackelford and Joan Van Ark appeared together on an episode of Wonder Woman before they started on Dallas and Knots Landing together.
That I knew. I didn't know it was Wonder Woman, but I knew it was another show.
It was an episode of Wonder Woman with Linda Carter, and that's why when they were casting Gary, they even had a discussion with Joan about it. And she's like, when they pitched his name, she's like, "Oh yeah, he'd be good." So, yes,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So Valine doesn't take the money, but the check is still missing from the family checkbook.
JR set her up, let's put it that way.
Yeah, and JR tries to make it look like, she took money to leave town. So that's what he tells Lucy, and Lucy ends up slapping him.
Which was a great Lucy scene. Again, they gave her some legs right away to begin with. She had a lot of backbone, and she's kind of standing up because she wants her mom more than she wants her dad, but if she could get them together as a package deal, she'd take it. But she really wants that relationship with her mom. And that's why I feel like she does soften towards Pam, and they start to have a little bit of that relationship because she does like having that motherly figure in her life.
Yeah, plus leading up to Knots Landing, Valine makes a couple of more appearances. So.
Yep, definitely.
And she's definitely is warmer towards Valine than to Gary.
Yep.
Well, even when she came on Knots Landing.
Without a doubt, that episode, you guys discussed that one too, and they brought her there for a visit. And right away, Lucy kind of started turning on her dad because she felt like he didn't protect her and he didn't stick around and fight for her.
I think she has a line like, "You're going to tell me how to act after all these years, Daddy?"
And to that point, Ted Shackelford played that fatherly guilt really well. That's why I don't feel this first Gary that they had could have played that. I don't think we would have felt it like what we did with Ted Shackelford.
I don't think we would have got the same alcoholic as we did with Gary.
Right.
Ted Shackelford, because he did that part.
Agreed.
I think Lucy slapping JR is the first major slap of the series.
And he deserved it, and it was awesome.
I would have pegged Pam for that one with JR.
True.
But, and doesn't he say something like they always kill the messenger or something like that?
He does have a line, something of that nature, yes.
Yeah. But I really love the two-parter. Maybe because it ties into Knots Landing, and so I have extra affection for those characters.
Sure.
What did you guys think of it?
Oh, I enjoyed it.
I did too. I thought it was good to see. I thought it was good considering they brought that show back after that 5-part miniseries and it became a regular series. It was good to establish this other brother that had been talked about, and we got to put a face to the name. I
feel like most soap operas do that, at least daytime soap operas.
Sure. If they're good,
they have like siblings or children that are off screen, and then they bring them in after a year or two.
Yep.
Or they cycle the ones that were there out, and they bring the other ones in.
Yep. That's good storytelling.
Yeah.
I feel like Knots Landing may be a little superior to Dallas, though.
I'll cheers to that.
But I think it's because
we got him.
I mean, I'm gay, so Knots Landing is, I feel like, more of a woman gay man show.
Well, that show definitely spoke.
It's got that like desperate. Well, I know it came first, but that kind of what Desperate Housewives or shows like that.
Sure.
It has that.
Well, we long for the same thing on the daytime soaps that we want. We want to see those females have other female friends and see those relationships and stuff like that build. Knots did a good job on that, let alone being in the cul-de-sac and all those neighbors knowing each other, and they all have their own secrets behind closed doors.
I want an LGBTQ Knots Landing.
Be awesome.
Awesome. You should, Lynn. You should send Aaron the video you sent me, the parody. He may not get all the references yet, but it's still
funny. Right. But man,
parody.
There was these two guys that filmed a whole bunch of like really significant Knots Landing scenes, and they just slapped it all together in like a 9-minute video, and it was hysterical because the way they delivered the line and their dialect and like their outfits and everything was such a throwback to the show. You couldn't help but laugh because it takes your brain like those extra 2 or 3 seconds to recognize what's going on, and you're just dying laughing.
All right, Tommy, we're going to California in March.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna recreate some of those Knots Landing scenes.
Don't make me want to go now just to see that.
Well, okay. Well, you should, because we need a Karen, a Val, and a Laura.
That could happen. I maybe won't go to the event that you're going to, but you keep throwing that teaser out there. I might invite.
And if you're interested about the event, it's Spectrum Celebrity Events. You know, they're having a day.
And it's filling up fast from everything that I've seen online.
Mm-hmm. Lots of great people coming.
Yep.
Who would I be of the Knox Landing characters?
I was thinking about this the other day.
What'd you say?
Valiant.
Would he be? I think he would probably be Val.
Yeah.
Of course I would. I'd be the one who would not want the girl that plays my daughter to be on the show because it makes me seem older.
And John could be Gary, and you could be like, I was coming to you just now.
I was coming to you.
Yes. We'll just, instead of saying poor Val, we'll just say poor Aaron. Hashtag poor Aaron.
And we could all take turns being Abby.
There you go.
We could all like recreate our favorite Abby scene at that point.
Okay. Well, if I'm Val, who are you, Tommy? I feel like you're a Laura.
I was gonna say that even though I didn't want to. But I love Laura.
Oh no, season 2, Laura, love her. Season 1, I was on the fence, but season 2, Laura becomes like someone I really like.
Yeah, I've been relating to her more, so I think I'm a Laura.
Yeah. Okay, there's good stuff in season 3 of Laura too. You'll like her even more, probably, Aaron.
I feel like Lynn's got to be Karen.
I am a Karen.
I aspire
Karen that we see on the internet bashed all days, but I'm a Karen of Knots Landing, without a doubt.
You're a Pollyanna.
I don't want to be a Pollyanna. Oh, you're gonna make me send him that video now just to watch it, even though he hasn't seen a lot of these scenes. He'll just have a good laugh over it.
We need to find the best. Then we need to find the best Val and Laura scenes that are crazy. Ooh, when Abby or
I'll do the whole Abby, like when they were at gunpoint and they were in the kitchen. You really are a bitch, aren't you? Aaron, you could be Abby for that so I can slap you.
Careful if I have a glass of water in my hand.
Oh my God. So here's the good news, everybody. Here's the good news, everybody. We're laughing and having such a good time talking about Knots Landing. We'll have a good Knots Landing podcast in the future because Aaron's gonna get caught up.
I've been missing it. I'm ready to watch again.
Awesome.
I can't help it. Cheryl Blossom has got me hooked with her talking to her dead brother, who she's like stuffed, it seems.
I remember this. This is also why I think I stopped watching.
Or when they do Cherry Bomb on the field.
I don't remember that.
They do a little cheer, and Cheryl sings this song "Cherry Bomb."
Oh yeah.
She's like, "Daddy, Mom." I love it.
So now we'll circle back to Dallas because I don't know if you wanted to give it a rating for what you've watched now off of season 1 into the start of season 2, or what you guys think.
I'd give it a B.
That's fair.
I'm trying to block my love for other shows out and just like focus on this. And if I had just seen this, yeah, a B is fair because it does get better.
I mean, I would give Larry Hagman and Victoria Principal A's right off the bat, just because they really stole those scenes.
Sure.
Linda Gray also, she was like, the secret star.
And acting wise, I'd give them all an A. I think they did really good. Nice. Show wise, overall B. Because you tuned in because you wanted to see them. Like, I think if different actors or actresses would have been in those parts, I'm not sure I'd be as drawn in.
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't have gotten picked up, or they probably wouldn't have decided to push forward with the series because if the right actors wouldn't have been there, the eyeballs wouldn't have stayed.
Because I kind of think of it with think of Knots Landing. Yeah, we just named off the four leading actresses of that show. We didn't mention Ginger, but that's because Ginger didn't draw us to we just didn't care about Ginger's storyline.
Ginger also wasn't in every episode.
True.
So, yeah, we really didn't write for her.
Well, that's because I bet they were like, we don't know what to do with her.
They struggled, kind of like with how they struggle with Lucy on Dallas too. So makes sense. I'd say a B as well too, because for out of the gate and what it brought and the cast and the star power, it was good. You know, it was peppering over to that B+ already. I think the forced recast of South Fork worked in its favor because that house became very iconic. That first ranch, you're just like, it just doesn't even, you can't even picture it in your head.
I think it also helped keep them relatable.
Yeah.
Because they were extremely rich family. You can't, most of middle America can't relate to that.
Yep.
But when you watch them, you almost sometimes forget they're these really rich people.
Correct. And this was supposed to be Miss Ellie's childhood home as well, too. So it would make sense that it wouldn't be such a grandiose thing because that type of money just probably wasn't available and didn't happen then that quickly.
Yeah.
So,
well, I liked, it's like you said, how they peppered in things. There was things that became big stories later on.
yes.
Like just even them mentioning Gary in the pilot.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
How are we to know that he would be on his own spinoff for 14 years?
Right. Because when Bobby and Pam were talking about leaving the ranch because of the friction between JR and Pam, and he thought that she gave away the information to Cliff Barnes, you know, Jock came and said, I already lost one son. I'm not going to lose another. And I'm like, ooh, that was very good writing. You know what I mean? It gave some depth to that character.
And them taking Sue Ellen's over drinking in the finale and making that an ongoing issue with her.
Definitely.
Lucy was the only
I
one
just love that something like this had, I don't know if they had the foresight to know that they wanted to do that, or they were like, ooh, we did this, let's just like kind of add to it. Like,
it kind of unfolds. That's where a creative team kind of works together, and there's like multiple writers in the room, and they have that open dialogue and discussion, and they're talking that out. I mean, I don't know if you do it, Aaron, with your show Tomorrow is a New Day that you're writing, but like Ron from Days of Our Lives, and he did this at General Hospital, has like all the cast of characters on a wall behind him, so he can constantly look at it, and he's thinking about the cross ties and who he's writing for and how it all ties in together. And to me, that's really smart.
See, I like some of the characters I like to write for before aren't the like I'm excited to write for since I've gotten actors.
Now that you have a voice.
Now that I have a voice, like, and some people who go together, like I had this whole idea for like later on down the line, and it's changed because these two voices that I just realized they sound really good together.
Yep.
I'm like,
I think that happens on TV too, though.
Exactly.
Like,
they see that magic happening behind the camera, and they want to keep.
And it wasn't even an important scene. It was just a little banter between these two characters. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I got ideas.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
But no, it's right now. It's literally just me. But I feel like eventually I'm going to have to bring in some extra help. I can't sustain
it. A breakdown writer and a day.
Because then you'll have more time to watch Nuts Landing, Tommy. That's the
great. We could do a whole podcast just about that, like me trying to sustain. I can't do it. I'm falling apart.
So that being said, with your guys' busy schedule, what are you guys chatting about tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night, I'm glad you said that because I was going to segue into that. We are covering Gossip Girl Season 1, Episode 9, which is the Thanksgiving episode.
Oh, I thought we were doing Season 3.
Uh-oh.
No, Season 1.
Damn, I'm so excited. Season 3 has this great like dinner fight, and then they all start bickering, and then the song "What'd You Say" starts playing.
Okay, so we're watching Season 3.
No,
the Thanksgiving
season
episode.
1, Episode 9. Season 1, Episode 9.
Okay.
We'll save that for another year.
Okay.
Nice.
Because we figured, Thanksgiving's coming up. Might as well cover some Thanksgiving episodes.
Who doesn't love a little family drama?
Cool.
Next Tuesday, we're covering the OC's first season Thanksgiving episode.
Nice.
And next Monday, we are covering the first season of Dirty Sexy Money.
Ooh, I gotta get to work. Wait, so I'm having to ask our own schedule. I told you my life's falling apart.
So tomorrow we're doing Gossip Girl, Season 1, Episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
Monday is Dirty Sexy Money, Season 1. And next Tuesday is the OC, Season 1, Episode 11.
I'm good.
Nice.
I'll be there. I'm good.
Very
Okay.
good.
Good.
Well, cool. Well, this was fun revisiting Dallas tonight, guys. Thanks
Yes,
for.
thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a good time.
And hopefully we will see you before the Knots Landing episode again.
We'll see.
I'm going to work my little gay heart. And
Well, bless your heart.
oh, good work. Good work. Because you had that hint of shade. But you don't seem like it.
Oh, buddy.
You're such a bitch.
Oh. You have been watching Dallas.
All right. Good night, guys.
All right. We'll see ya.
Bye.
Bye.